Oh, such a joy to be with you all this evening. We're going to be turning in our Bibles. If you want to grab them, if you've got it on your phone. I recently read a quote by a historian who was an atheist agnostic called Tom Holland, and his job was like studying the first century. And he said of Paul's letters and the four Gospels that these were the most influential, impactful, revolutionary texts to come out of the ancient world. And that's what we're going to read. We're going to go to one of the Gospels, John's Gospel. And John's Gospel is one of the most profoundly theologically rich books of the whole of the New Testament. It's been said that John's Gospel is a gospel that elephants can swim in and children can paddle in. It's like a literary masterpiece, this narrative that is so easy to engage with, to understand, and yet has these depths of understanding and meaning about who Jesus is, what he was like, and what he came to do. And so we're going to turn to John 11, verse 17 to 44. Now, this chapter is the centerpiece of John's gospel. It's this moment of transition. Jesus has been spending his time preaching, healing, just out in public. And then this event happens, and then suddenly things change, and he makes his way to Jerusalem. And the rest of John's gospel is him speaking with his disciples and preparing for his death and then his resurrection. And this moment here, we find all the themes that have been building in John's gospel of light and life, belief and glory culminate here. And it's a moment that foreshadows Jesus' own death and resurrection. And verse 17 says this. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha answered, I know he will rise in the resurrection of the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she replied. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come into the world. After she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. The teacher is here, she said, and asking for you. When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house comforting her noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. And Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, see how he loved him. But some of them said, could he who opened the eyes of the blind not have kept this man from dying? Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. Take away the stone, he said. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there is a bad odor, for he's been in there 4 days. And Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me. But I say this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you have sent me. When he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. I don't know what your attitude is like to timekeeping. My husband hates, and I mean hates, being late. Have we got anyone else who absolutely, punctuality is his gift, it is his call, it's his passion. Just hands up again, because I just need to clock never to be late for any of you. Okay, got it. Whereas I, on the other hand, I do not share this gift or this passion. I am one of those people that kind of has 2 gears. I'm either dawdling around, like enjoying life, or then realizing I'm running out of time and I'm panicking, headless chicken, stressed, get everything done, go, 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 go. So that makes for a really interesting marriage. So whenever we're trying to get ready to go somewhere, Andy's very clear at the time I have to be ready. He's like, Rachel, be ready to leave by this time. Now, usually I'm like running around stressed and I still somehow end up being late. So we get in a car to go for a meal and I'm feeling so bad. We're like 20 minutes late. And I know this is like violated a core value for Andy. Like he is in deep distress. So I'm apologizing and just feeling so bad. And then realizing he's like eerily calm. And like, I'm like, why are you so calm? And then I realize he's done it again. He's applied something he calls the Rachael buffer. The Rachael buffer is an extra amount of time of about 30 minutes that he adds to any event, meal, or meeting that we're meant to be at. So I'm in a car, stressed, anxious, thinking I'm 20 minutes late, but I'm in fact 10 minutes early. Part of me is like deeply annoyed, and then another part slightly relieved. Now, he's been doing this for 10 years, and it catches me out still to this day. So top marriage tip, if that's going on, marriage course advice here. But this evening, the thing that I want to speak about is when God seems late. See, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus were really close friends of Jesus. And if we'd have read a little bit before this passage, we would have read how Jesus has heard that his friend Lazarus is ill. But then he takes 2 days before he even sets off to see him. And so by the time Jesus is walking into this village, it is a village thick with grief. He's meeting his friends who are filled with pain and disappointment. And here I think we find this anger within Mary and Martha when they both say, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. For this family, they're like, Jesus, where the heck were you when we needed you? And I think here we find articulated one of the biggest objections a lot of people have to the existence of God. God, if you were here, God, if you were real, then this would have never happened. God, if you were real, then I wouldn't be wrestling with this illness. God, if you were real, then that person wouldn't have died. God, if you were real, then surely you would have answered that prayer or that promise. And the truth is, I imagine we can all point to things or moments in our lives where we have been left asking those same questions, wondering where God is. And I don't think it's any accident that this kind of questioning, it goes on in the Bible again and again. We find from the book of Job, the earliest book in the Bible, all the way through the Psalms, and then here with this family. The question of where God is in times of deep pain, deep suffering, deep disappointment, when there seems to be an overwhelming amount of questions and very few answers. And in the same way, I imagine the tomb of Lazarus for that moment would have been like a monument in the village to an unanswered prayer, a monument to a God that seemed to be too late, to a God that didn't seem to care or listen. I wonder if there are these places in our lives, moments, events, experiences, relationships where hope has been deferred, dreams are unfulfilled, places of seemingly unanswered prayers that we rather weren't there. For some of us, it might be like this place, this tomb is at the edge of the village. It's something that happened maybe a while ago. It's distant, it's historic, but it's still there. It's still part of your story. But for others of us here today, there'll be some of us who are in a season where it feels like this place of disappointment, of pain. It's like it's in the center of our village. It's in the center of our lives. We can't go a day without asking these questions and wondering what the heck is going on. Where is God in this? And I think the truth is the world doesn't quite know what to do with these places of pain, of disappointment. My mum died of cancer when I was about 14 years old, and I'd just become a Christian, and so these questions very quickly became part of my relationship with God and a wrestle with my faith. And I remember they were going to school and people just not knowing what to say. teachers, friends, people completely lost for words. And obviously for those first kind of few weeks, there's condolences, there's good wishes, but then for the months, years afterwards, the silence is deafening. Our world doesn't have many answers. Our world doesn't know what to do with these moments that don't make any sense. And I think especially in our culture in the West, we don't know what to do with death and pain and struggle. But this passage teaches us that these are the very places that God doesn't avoid. These are the very places where God is not speechless. He's not left helpless. But these are the places where he turns up the most, where he longs to be present, where he longs to speak. You know, Jesus enters that village and he says, "Where have you laid him? Take me to it." Where are these places for you? In John's gospel, it's amongst the stench of death, of sheer hopelessness, that God paradoxically most reveals his glory. We see it both here in John 11 and the resurrection of Lazarus, but then ultimately in Jesus' own suffering, his own moment of pain, his own moment of crisis, where he cries from the cross, "God, God, why have you forsaken me?" It's then in the resurrection that God's glory is most revealed in a place of the most difficult pain and questions. God does the biggest work for all of humanity. I don't think we expect God to turn up in these places. But the Bible says again and again, God is close to the brokenhearted. He comforts those who mourn. He sets the captives free. He binds up the brokenhearted. So I think this passage teaches us about what God is like in these moments, in these dark valley questioning moments. And I think it teaches us what faith in him looks like when we're facing some of the worst stuff life could throw at us. And firstly, I think that it teaches us that faith feels. See, Jesus is modeling and teaching us what faith looks like. But this lesson doesn't begin when he walks into the tomb and cries out to Lazarus. It begins before that in verse 35, the shortest verse of the Bible, when Jesus weeps. The other Sunday, I was walking to church with my daughters, Florrie and Addie, pushing them in the pram, and Florrie fell off the pram and hurt herself and started to cry, and kind of calmed her down and got her back in the pram, and she just said, with a tear still rolling down her face, she said, "Mummy, where do tears come from? Do they come from the water pipes in my eyes?" And I said, "Well, kind of. They're actually they're tear ducts." Then there was a moment of silence, getting into church. She went, "Mummy, how many ducks do I have in my eye then?" And I was like, "No, Florrie, not like quack, quack ducks. I mean like tear ducts." She was like, "Mummy, I don't get it." So we started to talk a little bit. Well, tears actually come from places of pain. They come from sadness. They come from our emotions. Tears actually come from quite a deep place within us. And I think the same was true for this moment with Jesus. He weeps because he feels. He feels the pain of death. He feels the absence of his friend. He feels the grief of this village. He feels the pain of a world that still has sickness and death all over it. Twice in this passage, we read that Jesus is deeply moved. This word isn't about bowel movements and missing a meal. This word is about a deep emotion, often used to describe anger. Jesus is angry. He's angry at the injustices of this world. He's angry when we hurt one another. He's angry when people die too soon, when illnesses rob people of life. He's angry. And I think the fact that Jesus feels all of this, even though he knows what he's about to do, even though he knows what's coming, teaches us something about what faith looks like. Because Jesus could have gone in and go, "Hey guys, stop the crying, stop the tears, it's fine, everything's going to be okay, it's all right, don't worry." And he doesn't. Because he's acknowledging a reality of human life that we have to live with until he returns. Faith is not the denial of pain or anger and suffering. It isn't rose-tinted glasses that makes everything just a bit better, it's okay. Rather, faith is a confidence in God, in who he continues to be in the midst of it all. Sometimes the presence of faith is a simple, quiet choice to carry on trusting God, to carry on praying to him, to carry on inviting him in. In the Gospels, I think we see that Jesus, he doesn't avoid grief. He doesn't avoid danger. He doesn't avoid anger or suffering, and he doesn't even avoid his own death. But he lives a life that has come through those things so that it can sustain us in them. Faith feels. But secondly, faith also invites. Faith doesn't just acknowledge the reality of the situation, but it invites God into it. In verse 39, Jesus says, take me to this place of unanswered prayer, this place of pain, this place of despair, this place of suffering. Take me there. And then he says, take away the stone and let me in. Jesus then prays, which is his first prayer in the Gospel of John, and he invites God to do what only God can do, to bring life. Faith always invites God's presence. Faith always invites God's voice, and faith always invites God's power into those places. And I wonder if God might say to us today, I see your disappointment. I see your struggles. I see that dream that hasn't come to be. I see how that didn't end as you were hoping or expecting. I know what you've walked through, and I know what you're still walking through. Now take away the stone and let me in. I think so often our temptation is just to bury these things, to hide these things, to drink it away, party it away, work away, Netflix binge it away, to ignore these places in our lives. And Jesus says, no, let me in. Let me speak. See, these events in John 11, we actually find the whole gospel story is being played out. Because what Jesus does for Lazarus, he will do for you and for me. This is both a spiritual reality of what happens when people hear the word of Jesus. When they respond to the word of Jesus, we come alive. Jesus makes dead people come alive. People who are dead with sin, with shame, with addiction, with past they don't know what to do with things that have been said and done to them. He brings dead people to life. It's what he does here. It's what he's done in you. It's what he longs to do in this city. In the same way he spoke into being the sky, the sea, the light, and the life in Genesis, he speaks life into us, creating, transforming out of nothingness, out of darkness, something beautiful. But one day this will also be a physical reality. At the heart of our beliefs, at the heart of the gospel, is the fact that Jesus died and overcame death and was raised to life so that death would no longer have the final word for us. In 1 Corinthians 15, Paul writes, if Jesus didn't actually die and wasn't actually raised to life, and if we're not actually going to experience life after this, then all of this, I'm paraphrasing, but all of this is a bit of a joke. It doesn't, the proof in the pudding is the fact Jesus came back to life. The thing that matters is knowing that you have a relationship with him, life in him, that will outlive even your bodies. That's a core, that isn't an add-on, that isn't a fairy tale aspect of the Christian faith. That is at the heart of the Christian faith. Paul writes in verse 19, if for only this life we have hope, we are of all people most to be pitied. Jesus goes to the cross, takes on sin and death itself, so that what happened to Lazarus might be possible for all who believe and trust in him, now and yet to come. After my mum passed away when I was 14, my dad, he didn't go to church, wasn't a Christian, didn't read the Bible. He didn't really know what to do with the pain. Like, we don't know what to do. He didn't know what to do with the grief, and for the next 15 years or so, he struggled badly in seasons with depression. And there was this time kind of after that where things seemed great, and we had, he was very fascinated about me going to get ordained, and we'd have really interesting questions and conversations about Jesus, and then he got cancer. And was touch and go for a while, and our whole church community at the time was praying for him, and he turned a corner, and then we had what felt like this extra year. My daughter Florrie had just been born, we had her first birthday, we had Christmas together, and then the COVID pandemic hit. And shortly after that, I remember just praying and having this strongest sense that I should go see him. We lived in London, he lived in sunny Scunny, and so like within the hour, it was like get in a car, go. I just had this feeling we had to see him. And as soon as I saw him, I could tell he wasn't well. And so we went to the hospital and they said, yeah, the cancer's returned. And within that week, I had like these 30-minute windows where I was able to go see him. And by the grace of God, in that 30-minute window, within that week, I was able to sit with him, invite the presence of God in, pray with him, read scripture with him as he took his last breaths. And I could tell you of the many, many moments, the difference that the presence of God made in those months. The difference being able to read God's word, to hear his voice, to hear his comfort, his peace, and the truth. I don't know how people live through these things without God, without his presence, without knowing that even in an atmosphere thick with death and hopelessness, without knowing the God of life who speaks in the middle of it all, who gives hope and who comforts and who sustains. But even now, 3 years later, I still would say that's like a tomb, a place of pain and disappointment that I still need God to speak to. I still need God's truth, God's love, God's wisdom. Even a while back, I was praying and I really felt like God kind of spoke to me that subconsciously, for whatever reason, I realized I'd failed my dad. And I knew logically there was nothing I can do, but it was like this realization of, I feel like I've been living like I failed him as a daughter. I failed him as a Christian. I didn't spot the cancer sooner, I didn't pray for him harder, I didn't shout louder at the hospital. So even now, I need the life of God, the truth of his voice, to heal and to bring life. I wonder if today there's some places for you where Jesus would say, show me where it is. Take away the stone. Let me in. Let me speak. Often I think we can think these seasons of like dark valleys of struggles, they're like obstacles in the way of us and God. So much of that season, I remember thinking, if only I wasn't struggling with this, if only I wasn't going through this, then I'd be like, my faith would be on fire for God. I'd be so passionate for God. If only this wasn't going on in my life. But I think it's these places where God meets us most powerfully. It's these moments where trying to hang on and hold on to anything else fails, and we realize the deep dependence we have on God. Our very life is sustained by him. Now, often, me and Andy, if we have people around for dinner after we put the kids down, there's like this mad 10 minutes that makes like Black Friday look calm, where we are tidying the house. It's like we don't want people to know that we have children and we have mess. So it's like panic, hide stuff, like food in like random cupboards, like the dog in the fridge, like toys under just clear the house. So people come like, hello, welcome to our calm and pristine house. It's like we love to hide the mess, don't we? But the truth is we never have to do that with God. Jesus spent most of his ministry not in shiny, polished synagogues, but in the ordinary, gritty reality of people's lives. He turned up in the mess, he turned up in the pain, he turned up in the dysfunction, and that's where he ministered, and that's where he brought life. So I want to encourage you, whatever reality looks like for you, wherever you are, God doesn't want to meet you anywhere else. He doesn't want to meet your preferred self, your LinkedIn self, your Instagram self. He doesn't want to meet your Sunday best. He wants to meet you, whatever you're going through, whatever you're wrestling with. He's the God who speaks life. And I think that's what he wants to do today. Should we stand and should we pray?